Preview season continues, and today it's all about the Kansas Jayhawks. Can they improve, get back to really competition in the Big 12? Will Jalon Daniels stay healthy? That's probably the biggest question they have. Can they continue running the ball? Can they continue playing defense? We got all that and more here on this fine Friday edition here of Armchair Analysis. Again, it is Friday, June 27th, 2025. Hope you guys are having a fantastic week so far, having a great day, of course. If you are new around here, please leave a like, subscribe, comment down below. We're previewing all 68 Power 5 teams, or Power 4 teams, 67 Power 4 plus Notre Dame to hit that 68 number. Previewing all 68 of them every single day from June 1st all the way until we are done, which I think is going to be August 7th or 8th. Really excited for that. And then, of course, we get into more previews. We got Heisman, playoff predictions, conference predictions, outright conference predictions rather than just team predictions. And we put together what should be a really, really fun slate of a college football road trip, which is not something that I do. However, it's something that if I had all the money in the world, if the money were no object, money spare no expense, what games would I go to every single week in the college football season? We do that, of course, later as well as we get closer to week 1. But for now, though, it's preview season. And let's go ahead and talk about the Kansas Jayhawks. This team in 2024 went 5-7, 4-5 in Big 12 play. They averaged 29.7 points per game. It was good for 52nd in the country. They allowed 26 points per game, which was 76th. And they were a positive turnover margin per game, plus 0.1, which was top 60. It was 56 in college football. Lance Leipold, of course, returns, and they got Jim Zebrowski, and Matt Lubick taking over the offensive coordinator duties, pairing up for the offensive coordinator duties. DK McDonald is going to be the defensive coordinator this year. And this is a team that I think has a lot of excitement behind them, but a lot of question marks as well. This is a team that only returns 3 starters each on both sides of the football, and they're trying to figure out how they can become a team that competes in this conference, especially as tough as it is. And if we're being honest, as tough as their schedule is, it is not easy at all to really get through what they are facing this year. They're facing some of the best teams in this conference. They have some lighter games, but they're facing some of the best in the conference, to include a Utah, Iowa State, Kansas State, Texas Tech. They'll even play West Virginia, who's really unknown. Cincinnati's going to be a good team, at least on defense. That'll be a coin flip game. They get some lighter stuff, Oklahoma State, UCF. And then they go out of conference. They play Missouri, so that's going to be a lot of fun too. I'm excited to see that game happen at Faurot Field. But with that schedule, let's look at what this team brings to the table. Of course, the offensive coordinators, again, Jim Zebrowski, Matt Lubick. Quarterback, Jalon Daniels. Can he stay healthy? I mean, let's just cut to the chase. Can he stay healthy as a part of this team? The last couple of years have been hampered by injuries. Obviously, he had a throwing shoulder injury that really set him back. And if he can, then he becomes a very big part of this team. As a matter of fact, it's the easy answer to say he is the impact player of this offense. But let's not just look at him and act like he's the only reason. LaShawn Williams comes over from Iowa. Now, last year, he was not a very impressive player. He didn't really do a lot for the team. But in 2023, he rushed for 821 yards and added a touchdown on top of that. And that's on top of what Caleb Johnson began to do for this team as well. He decides he's going to enter the transfer portal, and he comes over to Kansas, where he's going to replace Devin Neal. And he is going to be the starter almost without question to me. And it's going to be between him and then Daniel Highshaw also was a running back over 350 yards last season. Those are 2 guys that I think can truly carry the load for the offense. And then, of course, Jalon Daniels, what he can do on the ground. I think he'll be a 500-yard rusher should he stay healthy. At the wide receiver position, they have a lot of intrigue and a lot of players, and some that I wrote down, and then there's some that when I was doing some more studying, I found that I'm gonna go over. Couple transfers: Cam Pickett, Emmanuel Henderson Jr., and Bryson Canty. Pickett coming from Ball State, Henderson coming from Alabama, and Canty coming from Columbia. Now, some other guys that we're gonna expect to see on this team: Keaton Quebeca and Doug Emelian as well. And then Levi Wentz is an interesting name too, another transfer wide receiver that they have on this roster. At tight end, they have Deshaun Hanukkah. I think that's a guy they're expecting to be pretty solid. They also have Leighton Cure as well, another senior tight end that they can go to if they choose. The offensive line, they bring in one transfer, and we're gonna try to get this one. Tavaki Tuiko Lovato. I think I did pretty good on that. Coming over from UCLA, he's going to be a pretty interesting addition in the starting lineup. At least that is my projection, and that's what I've seen in a lot of places at left guard. This team last year had some really good grades, some of the better ones that we've seen so far. They were 79.2 pass block and 79.9 run block. Didn't get a ranking out of that, but it is certainly interesting. I think that's going to be another key thing here. Line of scrimmage play, going to be a big deal, and they are going to run the ball very well. The question for the offense, before I move on to defense, for me right now, as I sit here and I'm thinking this through my head, which I do a lot. I do think a lot of things through before I move on. The wide receiver room, obviously not a lot of proven production, especially not at the Power 5 level. They're bringing in Canty again from Columbia, who they expect to be really good, but how do we really know? If they can find a wide receiver or two that can be dynamic on top of the running game that they're going to have and the playmakers, I think LaShawn Williams is going to be involved in the passing game. This can become a bit more of a dangerous team to upset some teams. I don't think they're going to be a contender because it's just too much to go through with the talent on the roster, and especially the defense, which we will now get into. But it does make them a little more dangerous in a shootout scenario. On the defensive side, 5 of 11 players return from 2024's roster. Again, 5 of 11 projected starters return from 2024's roster. 3 of those 5 are starters from last year. They went to the portal, and a 39th ranked transfer portal class, by the way. They went to the portal and they did some really good stuff defensively. Bangley Kamara, coming over from South Carolina, going to be an interesting linebacker, but he is going to be projected to start. Trey Lathan comes over from West Virginia. That's a big deal. That is a huge addition to this defense. Then they also bring in Justice Finkley from Texas to be on the defensive line. They do some work up front. The front 7 looks okay. But now let me get into my big concerns, because I went through their returning players and I found their numbers from last year and how much of their returning production plays into last year's team and basically what they're losing. So the 5 players are projected to start from last year's roster combined for 111 tackles out of 685. You're losing over 500 tackles, really closer to 600 tackles from last year's roster. You are losing over half of your sacks from last year. This team accounts for 10.5 sacks through 3 players. Out of 28 last year, you're losing 17.5 sacks. You lose all 12 interceptions from last season. You lose 5 out of 6 forced fumbles from last season. And you lose pretty much all of your tackles for loss as well. You only have 19 of 74 tackles for loss returning from last year. You see where I'm going with this. Now, hearing that, that's where the names I just mentioned come in. Kamara, Lathan, Finkley. Those guys are going to especially account for tackles for loss, and sacks. Trey Lathan's probably going to account for an interception or 2. I would probably say Kamara will as well. it is not out of the question that these guys can replace some of this and even be better. They're not going to replace all of it. Nobody's going to have these three are not going to combine for 500 tackles, and if they do, then it will set some records that will never be touched again. But what they will do is add some leadership and experience to a defense that certainly needs it, and I think that's the biggest thing that I had to say about this team and this defense going forward. Again, a team that gave up 26 points per game, I think that number, if I'm being completely honest, I think that number is going up. Just honestly, I don't see this team. They may stay consistent. They may be 25 or 24, but I don't see it going below 23, 23.5 or so, somewhere in there. My thoughts on this team is that they're in a position to try to regroup. Not many proven players at the Power 4 level. The Big 12 is not a conference to have so much uncertainty. I think that's a fair place to sit. Now, as I did in yesterday's show, and it's going to be here from here on out, I'm going to shout out a couple things here, okay, real quick. And these are not ads. If they were, I would make sure you know. I'd have to actually disclose that it's an ad, if to be honest. These are not ads. I'm not paid to say these things. They don't even ask me to say these things. As a matter of fact, they probably don't even know that I exist. However, what I am going to do is shout out what I have always used to get my information and or some of the things I've always used to get my information, how I come up with everything that I come up with, and then put together my thoughts. Athlon Sports College Football Preview Magazine. This, as a matter of fact, is a Big 12 East cover edition. They have all previews for every FBS team. They have playoff projections, national unit rankings, things to watch, a bunch of different articles in here that are really cool to read. It's a good pickup. It's a good read, especially if you want just team-specific things like that. Now, if you want a full look at every single roster in the sport, if you want to look at every single, if you want to look at all kinds of notes and all kinds of stats and things like that over the last 10 so years, this next one is the place to go. And again, he doesn't know I exist, even though it'd be cool if he did. Phil Steele, College Football Magazine 2025 preview. This is the East Coast cover edition. Biggest reason, Lake Horvath, big fan. With all that out of the way, again, not paid, not ads. Buy if you wish, don't buy if you don't wish. I really don't care what you do. Just for transparency on where I get some information. And I really like to shout these things out because opposing coaches will say similar stuff sometimes to what I say, and sometimes they'll say the complete polar opposite of what I say. Really depends. But I do like to give this info, and the last couple of years I've done this, and now that I have these magazines in hand again, we can do it again. So this is an opposing Big 12 assistant coach about the Kansas Jayhawks. Anonymous, by the way. You see a lot of holes when it comes to returning production, but I wouldn't rule out a bigger step forward this season if Jalon Daniels is healthy. He's a star player, and they really thrive off of him. On paper, they're not a top-end team in the league. They're replacing a lot at receiver, tight end, and linebacker. But this program gets the most out of what they've got. I wouldn't pick against Lance Leipold when they're bringing back a veteran quarterback with a really solid line and a good defense. They can run the ball very well, and the Iowa back, which is LaShawn Williams, of course, could fit in really well with what they do. If they can find some receivers coming out of camp, then they're going to be a very tough team to play and might surprise some people. So a lot of talk about the offense, not a lot about the defense, but it's a very similar thing to what I have just said, which is cool because I don't read these until I do them, actually. And when I read them with you guys, that's the first time I see these comments. Kind of cool to know on the same page. With all that said, we've already talked a little bit about the schedule, but let's go ahead and pull it up on screen here. It's interesting because you have a pretty light non-conference schedule. It starts in week 0, actually, with Fresno State at home. You get Wagner in week 1, and then you get Missouri on the road in week 2. I don't know where the stutter came from, but it happens. Looking through the conference schedule, it's brutal. It is tough. They have some tough home games. They have some really tough road games. It's going to be an interesting dynamic to see how they work through it. Their over-under win total sits at 6.5. They odds to win the Big 12 are 2,600, plus 2,600. National championship odds, plus 100,000. let's go ahead and talk about the Jayhawks. They'll go ahead and win their first 2 games. I think Fresno State, just a lot of question marks around that program and what they're going to be. They lost Mikey Keene, of course, to Michigan, so it's going to be difficult to see what they can do and how they transition and move forward. Wagner, that's an FCS. That is a easy win for an FCS game. Moving on, you go on the road to Missouri, and I think this is going to be a tough game. And while I don't buy into Bo Perbula, I do buy into this game being on the road and being a rivalry game, being a game that I think Missouri wants to win. They want to come out of this thing with the trophy in hand, the win in hand. And on top of that, I think I trust this Missouri defense more than I trust the Kansas defense, which is going to be a bigger deal down the line as we go. I'm taking Missouri to win. You get a bye week before you play West Virginia. The first of 3 bye weeks, by the way, on this schedule. But before you play West Virginia, and I'm going to be honest, I know there's a lot of change going on for the Mountaineers this year. Obviously, the addition of Rich Rodriguez coming back. As a matter of fact, it was just announced that they're bringing back the glossy Navy helmets. Love that. This is a fun team that West Virginia is, and they have a lot of potential, but they also have just so many questions because it's a huge transfer portal class. It's a new regime, a new but an old regime at the same time. This is kind of vaguely similar to Greg Schiano returning to Rutgers type of feel. I think that this is going to be an interesting game, but this is going to be one of those where if Rich Rod wants to really place his stamp, they got to win this game. I think that's what's going to happen. I'm taking West Virginia to get the win over Kansas, even in Lawrence. On the 27th of September, they will play Cincinnati at home. I think they'll get the win there. The Cincinnati team has a really good defense, but they're in a similar spot to Kansas, where their offense is just questionable. We don't know wide receiver. We don't know tight end. We really don't know health of a lot of players. I think that Kansas will have their offense figured out. I think that offensive line is just going to be so good and so much better, really, than what Cincinnati can provide offensively. That's going to help them get a win here. They'll beat UCF, and that's simply just because I think UCF is going to be down. They're going to have to figure out who they are under Scott Frost once again. It's going to lead to a really good game for Kansas, a really good win for Kansas. They get to play Texas Tech before the second bye week of the season. 2 road trips in a row, and they're not close. I mean, you go to Orlando for one, and then you go to Lubbock for the second. And this Texas Tech team is expected to be so good and be a Big 12 championship contender, maybe even the favorites, one of the favorites for Big 12 championship. They're not the favorite. I think Kansas State is. But the point being, this Texas Tech team, a lot of people are already in on them, giving a lot of early kudos to them. And I think it's for the right reason. I'm taking Texas Tech to win that game, especially being at home. K-State walks into Lawrence, and this is an interesting spot because it's out of a bye week. And that gives me a lot more hope that there's going to be a lot more preparation. They'll be ready to go for this game. I just think at the end of the day, Kansas State, much better team and going to be able to get the job done. They'll get the win there. At Oklahoma State, I'm going to give them the win. You guys already know I'm really down on Oklahoma State. I don't think a lot of the team. We will see what they end up being, but for right now, I'm not buying in. Arizona. This is a game that could go either way. I took Arizona to win. I'm sticking to it. I think Arizona will be the better team here, but I think this could be a shootout. This could be a really fun game, and maybe, just maybe, Arizona or Kansas gets the win over the Cats. For right now, though, I'm taking Arizona to win. Final bye week of the year, and then you get 2 games against Iowa State and Utah, 2 teams that I think are going to compete for a Big 12 title. Iowa State's going to be a loss. At this point, they're going to be ready to go all in on this season. I think Iowa State's going to be the better team. Utah, similar story. Better team. This game being on a Friday, Thanksgiving week in Lawrence, Kansas. I mean, we could see something interesting here. But I am going to stick to what I already have predicted, which is Utah getting the win over Kansas. Leading us to a 5-7 prediction, 3-6 in conference play. Compared to last year, you lose 1 win. from last year. But when you lose that one win, especially in conference play from last year, and a record that was, what was it, 5-7 last year too, you lose your one conference win that you had, but you also don't play teams like TCU and Arizona State. You don't play Houston, BYU. You don't play Colorado. You don't play Baylor even. So, I mean, truth be told, it's up in the air. I mean, you get some winnable games here, and it makes it a lot more simple for you to maybe get the job done. But 5-7, 3-6 for Kansas. Let me know what you guys think about my prediction here. Let me know if you agree, disagree. No matter what, it is okay. I do not mind if you do agree or disagree. But I do ask that if you've gotten this far, you leave a like, subscribe, comment down below. Let me know your thoughts on the Kansas Jayhawks in 2025, who I may have missed out on talking about earlier, and what you overall expect. Make sure you stick around, though. Tomorrow we got UCLA and the big story, Nico Iamaleava. But they bring in a lot more than just Nico, and I think it's going to be a team that has a lot of fun and a lot of really high hopes sitting behind them as we enter another season under Deshaun Foster and really a new offensive mindset. We'll talk about all that and more tomorrow. Make sure you stick around. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you with the UCLA Bruins preview.